Neho, bitches. That's right. Play PSVR 2, episode 112, coming at you hot and heavy. If you don't get the introduction, I just want to clue you into a little bit. Yeah, this podcast, we're in America, but we're going worldwide, baby. That's right. You're listening to the number 5 video game podcast in Hong Kong, and we're coming for number 1. And I couldn't read what the name was because it was in a different language, and I could not read that alphabet. But let me tell you, you better be on the lookout because we're going to be on top very soon in Hong Kong, baby. And then we're going to roll over. We'll be number 1 in Vietnam. We'll be number 1 in Singapore. We'll be number 1 in China mainland. We'll be number 1 in Japan. Then we're going to take the whole Pacific theater, parlay that momentum, take over Europe. And before you know it, it's a world war of Play PSVR 2, the podcast hitting you right between the earlobes, baby. That's right. We're not slowing down. Neho, bitches. Thank you for listening to us. We're going to keep bringing you that specific Hong Kong content that you're apparently looking for. Have no idea why the numbers jumped in the region, and they stay jumped. That's great. Keep listening to us. You know, if you're in Hong Kong right now listening to us, send me a letter. Let me know. Send me an email. You'll get the contact info at the end. I got to figure this out so we can capitalize on it, start making some fat cash. So I got to stop begging for review codes. I can just buy these games. Adam, today we are reviewing Drums Rock. We're reviewing Demeo. Sorry, we're reviewing Puzzling Places, and we're going to talk about a lot more stuff. But first, my man, how you doing tonight?
Listen, we are going to be soon first in Hong Kong, and we're going to be first in your mama's heart. Because like I said, I like being on top. Trust me, your mom knows, and I'm in her heart. I can't wait to get going. We have a lot to talk about. We ramble a lot. We should just get going, Alex. I am excited. I have a feeling we may have a little differing opinions tonight, but because of that, I wanted to come in hot. And I wanted to come in spicy. So I have jalapeno pepper soda. Now, do I think this is going to suck? Yeah, I think it's going to be really nasty. But before we just hop into it, I noticed, Alex, first, happy St. Paddy's Day.
Yeah.
Hello, Lassie. Happy St. Paddy's Day. Are you wearing any green?
I think I just sharted before the podcast, so there's probably some green in my underwear.
Good, because that doesn't count. It's time for you to eat a bean. It's St. Paddy's. You ain't wearing green. Boom. Eat that bean. Eat that bean.
Does it have to be a booger bean?
I love it, dude. I love it. Okay, let me spin for it.
The label came off.
Yeah, one came off. Okay. Totally random. Left or right hand?
Left hand.
Booger. You lucky. The other one was a barf,
topical.
But you lucked out. Booger.
It's a green. Hey,
it's green.
Yeah,
that actually makes a lot of sense.
That's what I was trying to say from the beginning, Adam. It should just be a booger bean straight up.
No, you're trying to get out. Tell me it's booger, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Do these go stale? It was like a stale booger. Oh.
Wow. Wow, this drink is horrible. Holy crap. It's like
rule of gamer juice. You got to drink it all tonight. Luckily, I just brought black coffee.
Dude, that is horrendous.
The booger bean has somehow made my saliva taste worse than the bean itself.
There's
I don't
42 grams of sugar in here. How? It's like, it's not hot. It feels like acidic. Like, it's like I drank Kool-Aid, but with bleach instead of full water. Like, it hurts when I drink it.
And you have to drink all of it, Adam. And Adam, while you choke that down, let's go ahead and get to the reviews because we got a lot of ground to cover tonight. So right out of the gate.
Oh, this is horrible.
Adam, it is order in the court, buddy. Gaming is in session, and on the docket today is the case of Drums Rock for the PSVR 2, developed and published by Garage 51 Entertainment. Coming in at a price of $19.99. There is a free demo available, which Adam talked about last week. So I'm presenting Adam the charges for Drums Rock are 1 count of percussive sensation, 1 count of playlist particularity, and 1 count of sweating the small stuff. The prosecution has the floor, and so I will proceed. So thank you, esteemed gaming court. Thank you, Your Honor and jury. Rhythm action music games have become a foundational component of the VR gaming library, filling the plastic guitar-shaped void left in the gaming community's life since the fall of the Guitar Hero and Rock Band franchises. What was once a ubiquitous, essential element of any dormitory party, music game peripherals have now made the journey through Goodwill shelves and into the land of late-night eBay novelty shopping lists. So what, my dear jury, is a musically untalented rhythm enthusiast such as myself supposed to do in the modern era of gaming? I bring forth the case of drums rock to answer that question. The first question anyone asks themselves, however, when venturing into the VR instrument simulation space is how could it possibly feel like the real thing? In drums rock, one is encouraged to sit down in front of a drum set comprising 2 cymbals and 3 drums aligned in a set in front of you. Over the player's shoulder, the defendant provides its weapons of percussive war in the form of 2 drumsticks, one in each sense controller, but held fast in hand by a trigger button. The first maneuver of any player will be obvious, a cadenced banging of the 2 drumsticks over the head, and it is from here that drums rock presents its evidence for feeling. Drums rock makes good use of haptic feedback in the controllers such that each strike feels believable. The cymbals feel different from the drumsticks feel different than the drums, each drum feels slightly different, and the placement of the drums themselves feels reasonable and within reach. You're encouraged to sit down and get a real feeling of reaching out to each individual pad to make sure you hit it appropriately. It is possible to adjust the spread to match your arm length and the height to match your height. And I found myself having to make adjustments so as not to inadvertently hit a drum or cymbal out of turn. And I'm still fine-tuning that a bit. But any skepticism I initially felt, however, regarding the experience melted away rather quickly as I soon dipped into the familiar movements I had when playing Rock Band with a physical drum. The lack of setup and peripherals in this case ended up being a boon to the experience overall, even though while minimized, I haven't been able to completely eliminate tracking hiccups or accidental hits or misses. For these reasons, on the charge of percussive sensation, I find drums rock guilty.
So I will say I played the demo, and there was something very satisfying about when you hit that drum as those little, I played the demon level, as the little demons were coming at you. There's something satisfying about that. I understand what you're talking about. Does that get less impressive or less fun the more you play it?
Not to me. It was satisfying in that when I hit the drum, I felt that response. I felt the resonance of it. And that's necessary, right? If you're not feeling that, then you don't feel like you're playing the music. You don't feel that response. You don't feel like you're actually engaging with the song. So it never really went away for me. The bad thing is, and as I mentioned, when you accidentally hit a drum, so you don't expect to feel a vibration and you do, that means you probably hit a drum way over there when you were reaching out there. The other issue I had sometimes was I like to cross my arms when I drum. I used to do it in Rock Band all the time. It's hard to do that with the Sense controllers because they're so big. You end up colliding a lot if you're not careful. So I ran into that a couple times, but I just learned to keep my hands in their appropriate spot.
Fair enough. Let's move on.
All right, on to the second charge of playlist particularity. We face the reality of any music-focused game in that it lives and dies by its playlist. While drums rock boasts around 30 songs, most, if not all, are either covers of popular songs from bands like Evanescence, Ailstorm, Blind Guardian, and a lot of rock bands that I admittedly have never heard of, or their original compositions from the drums rock team themselves. That being said, I haven't found myself disappointed in the cover songs, and although some of the original songs aren't my cup of tea, I still mostly enjoyed playing through them at least. One issue I do have with the songs, or rather the game in general, is the disconnect that can occur between a song's drum track and the actual drumming required in the game. For example, you see 3 demons coming at you, 3 notes coming at you that you need to hit, but as you hit the notes, you hear 4 or 5 or 6 or a nice tremble of but you're only hitting the drum 3 times. That disconnect kind of takes me out of it. I want to hit all those notes. For the easier difficulties, this is understandable. I was acclimating to the gameplay. You can't throw something like that at a beginner. However, even on the hard difficulty, there are still times wherein I hear a handful of extra drum strikes that are likely deemed too difficult to realistically replicate in the game. It's not a deal breaker. The game is plenty difficult, but it does mean that you likely won't reach the highs that you experience in something like Rock Band, where you have that physical drum kit, and the expert difficulty tracks in those games provide a near one-to-one connection between what I was actually doing and what I actually heard. I'll grant that this might just be a limitation of VR in general. as a button press detection is undeniably more reliable than VR collision tracking. However, I would be interested to see if maybe in a sequel or DLC or some kind of expansion, this gap can be closed a bit. Maybe they give us a higher difficulty. Maybe they just kind of open up the Pandora's box on some of these tracks and really see how many notes we can hit with this VR method of playing the instruments. But in the end, I still found myself rocking out to the rhythm as I drummed along with almost every song, which leads me to judge Drums Rock for the charge of playlist particularity. Guilty.
So I admit I've never played Rock Band, but I was a big Guitar Hero guy back in the day. And when you played a difficult song and you practiced and eventually you nailed it, there was a sense it was very rewarding. Do you, when you've played some of these more difficult songs, do you feel that same sensation? I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but I also had a guitar in my hand and I had practiced a long time to nail it. And then I finally did it. I feel like it might feel different, but could I be wrong?
Now, I haven't dove in and tried to like get an S plus rank or 100% or anything on these songs. But I do feel for the songs that have a close match from the drum track to the notes that you're actually being told to play, if that match is close enough, then I do feel satisfaction. But if I'm playing an easier song and the notes are kind of spread out and easier to hit, even though I hear tons of drumming in the background, I feel like I'm just doing good at the game. I don't feel like I'm playing the song quite as much. So I think my point is that satisfaction you feel has an upper cap to it because they're not making it a one-to-one match. They're not matching every note to every note in the game. And so, yeah, you still get the satisfaction of like practicing, learning the song, and they even have things that, encourage you to memorize a song. And so there are points in a song, you play a song, you start floundering in it, and then you finally figure out what the rhythm is and you start playing it. That feels really good. You start feeling like in tune with the game, in tune with the drumming, and that's what makes you feel like you are actually drumming and you're not just playing a VR game.
Cool. Let's move to the third point.
All right, that brings me to our final charge, 1 count of third degree sweating of the small stuff. As with any VR game, longevity can be an issue. With 30 songs on the docket, 3 difficulty levels, and no competitive multiplayer, there's a discernible limit on how long the game would last. However, there are nice touches implemented to help keep things fresh. There are a lot of unlockable customizations, such as purchasable drum designs, different sticks, and hand stylings, and things like that. And there's also a decent variety of gameplay modes in the campaign. I was surprised. You get stages with boss fights that require like furious drumming power struggles where you just bang it as hard as you can to fight against a demon. And then there's also some challenges where your hands are replaced with boxing gloves. So instead of drumming, you're punching the drums. And it's just a slight twist, makes the level different, makes the gameplay more, surprising and engaging. There's also, like I mentioned earlier, there's challenges to encourage you if you're going for scores. There's a no look. It uses eye tracking to tell if you're looking at the note. So if you look away with your eyes, it'll start building up a meter that will multiply your score the longer you look away. That's just an interesting thing they didn't have to do, but it encourages you to really figure out what's happening so you can play the game with your eyes closed and get a high score and feel good about it. Another challenge had me performing tricks with my drumstick. So you can drop your drumsticks, you can flick them in the air. If you flick them in the air and catch them, and then it charges them up, and then you get extra points when you start drumming right after that. So that's just, I don't know exactly, like I never felt the need to have to do it other than when they told me I needed to do it. But I would just still be tempted to, okay, there's a handful of notes, there's some space here. I'll bang with one stick and try to flick the other one. It encourages you to do these flashy things, and that itself makes you feel like a more accomplished drummer than you actually are. The gameplay variety kept me engaged while I played the campaign and helped the experience feel less monotonous in the event that I didn't particularly enjoy a song. However, if you're just looking for a mainline experience and have no particular fondness for the song list, then you're probably looking at something like a 5 to 6 hour experience just going through the campaign. However, if you enjoy the song list and you like enough of the songs, you'll likely find a lot more to enjoy as you challenge yourself to achieve this S+ rank on every song at these high difficulties. And if you're looking for a workout game, this game could certainly fit the bill, as by the end of my first session, my forearms had been made sore in a way that I hadn't heard of since Adam first installed Little Star on the PSVR 1. And for those reasons, on the charge of sweating the small stuff, I find Drums Rock guilty.
So for this game and this price, would you hope, as someone who purchased this, to get games and like an upgrade for free? And if not, if they made, let's say, a 5 music pack, so you get 5 songs, what price would you pay for that?
I think the pretty standard price is like $3.99 or $5.99 for like a high profile song, right? If something comes out on Beat Saber and it's a song everybody's asking for, $5.99 I think is what they're looking for that song, or maybe a pack of 3 songs from a certain artist. That would be good. I don't need a new free song pack, especially because the game's only $20. But I am hoping that there are more songs released because, like I said, I'll go through this. It'll be, I might put the game away for a while, and then I won't be enticed to jump back in unless there's a song I know and it's like, oh, I want to play that in Drums Rock. I want to drum to that song. But if it's too much, if it's like $10 for 5 songs, I'm probably not going to jump for it. But if they do start releasing song packs, $5 for 10 songs or something, I'm sure these things will go on sale. You get some bundles. If it gets a little bit of that love, I could see a lot of extra nice stuff being added into this game. And, probably down the road, there will be like a $30 version of this game that has all the bonus songs and stuff like that.
Okay, I'm interested in the final verdict.
Yeah, so overall, for the case of Drums Rock, as a purchase-worthy game, the Honorable Gaming Court finds you guilty. I liked it. I had a great time with it. Anybody looking for like a music act, I was skeptical. I didn't think it was going to work, right? I didn't think that air drumming was going to be effective, but I'll be damned if I didn't feel like I was drumming right into the first song. It sold me on the experience. Maybe it's the haptics, maybe it's the environment, maybe it's all that stuff. I really felt like I was drumming and I was having a good time.
Alex, I have to admit, this is the first soda I might not be able to finish. It is horrendous.
If you don't finish it, you eat a bean.
Okay, now the final thing we have to do to discuss Drums Rock is where does it fall on the Play PSVR 2 games list? So our top 5, we've got Resident Evil 8, Gran Turismo 7, Runner, Kayak VR Mirage, and Tentacular. The question is, will that be in the top 5? Where do you place it?
Looking at this list, when I was thinking about this, I was like, that's going to be a hard call. Where's this going to land? Looking at the list, it's obvious to me. It's the new number 4. Kayak VR Mirage drops down. Everything goes below it. Drums Rock is above Kayak VR Mirage. It sounds crazy, but if you think about what you're getting, Kayak VR Mirage is like a docile experience, a meditative experience, and it's probably pretty easy to get through all of that content quickly with not much reason to get back unless you're trying to wow somebody. Drums Rock is a game that I will happily revisit if I just want to feel the drums again. I want to listen to that music again and be part of it again. So yeah, I'm down with it. I'm ready for it. And yeah, it's a good game. It's a good number 4.
That is wild. All right. And as we move on, we had a very pleasant review put on iTunes this week. And, we want to shout out these people. And he or she, I don't want to assume your gender, Red Scott, gave us a review, 5-star, just said, loved it, listened to the first episode and loved it. Thank you for the content. Thank you, Red Scott, for listening. And thank you for commenting and reviewing us. That makes our day. And everyone listening, you in Hong Kong, we expect that. We won't be able to read it. We won't understand it, but I still want it. So thank you, Red Scott. Thank you, you people of Hong Kong. Do you have anything else to add, Alex, about Drums Rock before we move on, or the review, or just our games list in general?
I want to talk about, Red Scott 96 a bit. First, it said he listened to his first episode, probably not the first episode, because that was probably a rough episode. I imagine nobody else would continue to listen if they started with episode number 1. Red Scott isn't necessarily in Hong Kong. It was reviewed on the US iTunes store. That being said, leave us a review on iTunes. We'd love it. I think it helps us get out there more. Like something in some algorithm somewhere really cares about iTunes reviews. So we're ready to ride that wave to the top. And you're the ones doing it. So if you leave a review, we love it. Thank you. You can tell us you left it. We'll read it. We'll shout you out on the podcast. I don't even care. I'll talk about anybody you want me to talk about on this podcast. Adam, let's start the next review.
Listen, court is not over. We are back. Gaming is in session. But this time, may Demeo take the stand. This Resolution Games title is $39.99 on the PlayStation Store. And tonight, we're looking at the following: gameplay difficulty, gameplay length, and gameplay engagement. Now, on the counts of gameplay difficulty, I have this to say. I personally feel as though the game is entirely too difficult the way it stands. Now, I understand a good challenge breeds a rewarding experience, it breeds a replay value and an excitement. But for me, it took 8 games to play, and it took playing with someone who had logged over 100 games in Demeo to beat a single quest. I played by myself. I played with others online, and it certainly did not seem to matter. I will be the first to admit that, okay, maybe I'm not the best gamer here on earth. Maybe this type of game, I just don't think exactly the way they want me to, and I'm just not as good. But it shouldn't take relying on someone who has played the game for so long to play in a certain way, to play with a certain character set, to play in a different style in order to beat the game. Like, that is to me 100% bullcrap. You should not design a game like this that handcuffs you to only win in a handful of ways. You should have the freedom to beat it with any strategy and character selection that you choose. And there is absolutely no reason to not have difficulty levels, except if you have a complete and utter disrespect for the players. The game is too difficult and it makes it unfun to play.
All right, Adam. Time for my cross-examination for you. On the count of gameplay difficulty, I think that Demeo is just difficult enough. There's a needle to be thread here with difficulty in a game like this. There are levels that are early, you have the 6 books in the game, and the earlier ones are easy and the later ones are more difficult. But I never feel when I'm playing through Demeo like I'm getting steamrolled unjustly, and I'm always feeling a need to think strategically. As you're going through the game, there's a fog of war, so you always have the chance of getting surprised. You don't know what's behind that door. You don't know where the enemies are unless you have a line of sight on them. And the enemies always seem to have tricks up their sleeve. I played a game just the other day, and the enemy laid down a trap, like an egg, slime egg set right in front of the door, just so I couldn't walk through it without exploding that slime egg. That's some advanced AI in a game like this. Those kind of things are always surprising. And just when I was getting through the level and I thought that I had it cleared out, I opened a door and there was just a slew of baddies waiting for me behind that door. And they had tricks up their sleeves. They were teleporting new enemies. They were spawning new enemies. They were sneaking up on me. They were strategically taking out who they thought they should get rid of. So I never felt like I had full command over the game. And that's good. A game like this, where you don't have progression carrying over from game to game, needs to have that right level of difficulty so that you enjoy it the first time you play it and you enjoy it the 100th time you play it. And it's threading that needle for me. I'm never stressed out, but I'm also never so relaxed that I don't have to pay attention to what I'm doing. And I think for a game like Demeo, where it's this strategy RPG, that's the perfect level of difficulty. It's hard to do, and they made it happen. And I had a great time playing it because of it. I always walked away feeling like, yeah, I had a good shot. This was fair, and I had fun while doing it.
I don't know what to tell you. I disagree. What's your next point?
All right. Well, now we're going to go to the point of gameplay length, Adam. So for most people, gameplay length is really an evaluation of gameplay value. How much are you getting your money's worth in this game? Are you having a good time, and how long are you having a good time? Demeo, as I mentioned, contains 6 books, each with semi-randomized levels, so that no 2 games are likely to be the same. Enemy placement can be varied. The way they behave can be varied. It sounds like they have different sets of AI that can be dropped onto the enemies, and you don't know what they are until you encounter it. And the semi-randomized levels, there are, boards. This game is a game where you're basically simulating tabletop Dungeons and Dragons, but with actual pieces you're moving around on a set. Those boards or those levels can be randomized in what order you encounter them in, which makes, a kind of like roguelike-ish encounter. You're not going to see the same thing twice. On top of that, there are 6 different character classes. I think there might be more. We had a bonus one for PSVR 2, I believe. And they can add more with DLC. They've done it in the past for the other versions of this game. I'm sure they'll be continuing to do it because the game's successful. And so they're getting ample support in that aspect. And the character classes are varied enough that it gives you reason to go back and try to play through with a barbarian or with a bard or with an assassin or with a wizard, or I'm probably forget a guardian. They all have different strengths, they all have different weaknesses, and they all have different cards that they start out with or are likely to get. So when you're playing through single player, you have a lot to work through. You have a lot of stuff to encounter. When you play single player, you get to pick one of each of the 4 character classes, fill out 4 characters to play with, and go through the level. But when you play in multiplayer, you're playing with other people. You pick your class, somebody picks their class, and you go through the level together. A lot of people are playing multiplayer. It's a popular game, so you're not going to be struggling to find a game to play. So that is also extending the shelf life. And to what Adam said, you might jump into a game with a newbie. You might jump into a game with somebody who has tons of experience. And regardless of what experience level of player you jump in with, you're probably going to be right in that line just fine of enjoyable but defeatable difficulty.
See,
yeah.
my argument isn't that the game itself is too long, but the quests are too long. So to actually have a chance to beat a quest, you need to first milk the first 2 levels of the quest, and you need to milk them hard to get as much experience and money as possible. That obviously elongates the game. If you try to cut corners, you're not going to make it. You're going to get to the 3rd level and you're going to get trashed. So the winning game I played took about 3 hours, and playing by myself and the other non-winning quests that I was with and other multiplayers, we were on the same track to finish at that time as well before we had lost. So how often do you really have 3 straight hours to sit and complete a game in one sitting? I feel like that's pretty rare. And I know you can save the game if you are playing by yourself and revisit it, but playing by yourself is boring as beans. It sucks. So again, why could you not have some assortment of quests that some are shorter that take an hour or an hour and a half, and some that are long that take 3 or 4 hours? There's no reason except for another complete disrespect for the player's time. I just can't do it. I can't do it, Alex. And what also makes it even worse is not just this time commitment to play one quest, but then my next point as well, which is gameplay engagement. So the final discussion is simply, I admit that the first time you play the game, I would even maybe argue the first 5 hours, you're in a new quest and there are different environments. The characters are very detailed, both in their depth as a character, but also like physically when you look at them, the graphics are very good. They're very detailed characters, and the enemies are the same way. They provide a lot of variables, and it really leads to a great experience. However, that quickly grows old. And although I do appreciate those graphics and those details, after so long, 5 hours or so for me, they don't wow me anymore. So what's left is repetitive gameplay that takes too long to finish a quest, that is too difficult, that isn't engaging enough to play compared to Gran Turismo 7 or Resident Evil 8, Song in the Smoke. I could go on and on about many of the other launch games on the PSVR 2 library. And so I was just so incredibly bored by Demeo that even when I made it far into a quest, by the end of level 2, I just wanted to die of boredom. So I just wanted the experience to end. And at times, it's more of a test of your patience than it is of a test of your skill. That isn't a mark of a good game. A good game I want to play. I don't want to stop. And as bad as I hate to say it, Demeo is not that.
I don't believe you, Adam. Objection. Objection, Your Honor. On the case of user engagement, I find it surprisingly engaging. Adam is a man with unlimited free time, and I'm a man with very minimal free time. It's odd that he is upset that a gaming session could take too long, and I find myself completely satisfied with the length of the games. In terms of engagement, multiplayer is self-explanatory. You can play a bad video game with your friends and still have a good time. Playing with random people on the internet, because of the way the game works, you're not likely to be stuck with somebody who's griefing, somebody who's power leveled and going to ruin the experience for you, somebody who's dead weight that you're going to feel like you're dragging. So again, you're going to be on that finely tuned level of difficulty with something good and enjoyable to take away from most of the experiences. when you play single player, the game is like playing, interactive chess against an AI that is capable. Now, it's probably not as deep as a game like chess, but there is a lot of variety, like I mentioned, with the characters. So, you go through and you have to think for each character, how am I going to approach this? Because you're not overpowered, because you do stand a chance of almost any enemy killing you, you have to think creatively. You have to use all the tools at your disposal, whether it be proper placement, exploding necessary traps, avoiding dangers, not being too ambitious and clearing out a level. And one of my favorite things is the card randomization. You have the cards which dictate your moves. You have basic like attack, special skills that stay there. You have basic cards like, heal yourself or heal a teammate, but then you get random cards into your deck. And because you can only hold so many cards and because the move set is so limited, you're encouraged and incentivized to play and be creative with the cards that you have on hand. For example, I played as the Bard. He had this skill that allowed you to summon a hurricane that you couldn't control, and it could annihilate you, but it could annihilate the enemies. I don't like being out of control, but I needed something in that moment. I casted that card, and I was pleased with the results, and it encouraged me to think about how I could use that card in the future, whereas normally in a game like this, I would have just ignored that card and moved on with it. Other nice things, since leveling and upgrades don't carry over, you don't get over leveled, so you end up not getting bored of the game necessarily. You always stand a chance of dying, you always stand a chance of winning. And then, in terms of just how the game is presented, you are in a basement, there is a tabletop in front of you, and you're able to zoom and pan around the board, but you can grab the board and rotate it around. You can zoom into the level so you can make this a really up close and personal encounter. And I found myself, if things started to feel stale, I would zoom the board around, rotate the board around, zoom in, and give myself a nice like third person action view. Or if I was feeling uncomfortable, I might zoom out and try to play the game like a really, zoomed out game like Diablo or something like that. Get that kind of gameplay variety in there. I appreciated it. I moved things around and adjusted things a lot more than I expected to. And that level of engagement just kept the entire experience fresh as I was going through it.
Okay, the final verdict is in regard to Demeo, based on the topics of difficulty, length, and engagement, and ultimately whether Demeo is a worthy PSVR 2 title. This court finds you hung. It is a hung jury. It's a hung jury. So first of all, what does this mean? What does a hung jury mean? It means that depending on your personal taste in games, you may either love this game or you may dislike it. It's a personal choice. So the graphics, the attention to gameplay detail, and the ability to just sit back and have a great time with some friends can provide a very rewarding experience. But on the other hand, the long game times, the lack of stimulation, and difficulty could be off-putting to some. The court has spoken. So, Alex, where does this go on our list? And this is, I understand and appreciate Demeo for what it is, even though it's not my type of game. So I probably won't fight back on you too much. It's not going above Gran Turismo 7. There's no way. There's no way. This is tough. Again, I know Demeo is a better polished game than Runner, but I actually enjoy playing Runner. Whereas for you, I think you also appreciate Runner, but you probably don't have as much fun playing that as Demeo. So I feel like it's got to be 3 or 4. But what do you
I think that's a good line that you set with Runner, whereas I would put it above Runner, and I think you understanding the value of this game, you're wanting to put it under Runner. I think splitting the difference, I think it goes below Runner and above Drums Rock. 5 years from now, looking back at what games I want to play on PSVR 2 again, it's going to be Demeo over Drums Rock, even though I had a good time with Drums Rock. I think it should land at the number 4 spot.
I'm fine with that. I was even going to let you put it above Runner if you really wanted, but I'm not going to argue because, like I said, I enjoy playing Runner. You have 5 extra minutes. You can play Runner. You can't play Demeo. I think that's special. So very quickly, you really like Demeo. I loved Table of Tales, The Crooked Crown. So I was pumped for Demeo because they're very similar games. So I'm surprised I didn't like Demeo because I love Table of Tales. Like, it was one of the games I played last in PSVR. So I want to convince you to play Table of Tales. Now, granted, that means you got to whip out your PSVR. But the things I like about Table of Tales is, one, I feel like the difficulty was more variable. It wasn't as stringent of you need to have these characters and you need to play in this specific way. I mean, I guess just in general, it was easier. So it allowed you to have, if you wanted to take risks that you knew probably weren't very smart, you could still get away with it. You do that in Demeo, you're effed. You're gone. You're going to die. The environments in Table of Tales change. They're very dynamic. That's dope. Like, the world is moving, not to like screw you necessarily, but to sit there and watch the world change around you is really neat. And it has a plot. So there's a story all the way through. So with what you know of Demeo, the fact with that it's dynamic, it has a plot, it's similar gameplay, it's not multiplayer. What else would I need to do to convince you to play Table of Tales, if anything?
Ported to the PSVR 2. Honestly, playing Demeo got me more excited about Table of Tales. I found myself thinking, man, I really had a good time with this. This is what I hoped this kind of game would be in VR. Demeo is, that's what I'm saying. And it made me want to play Table of Tales because Demeo, like you said, there's a plot there, but truth be told, it doesn't really mean much. I've listened to the plot synopsis a handful of times and it doesn't make any sense to me because you just kind of don't care about it. It doesn't really matter. A real plot would be more engaging. Characters that you get used to could be more engaging. I do really wish that it was on PSVR 2 just so I could play it. I don't want to have to set up my PSVR 1 just to play Table of Tales. And it would also be nice to not have to struggle potentially with the Move controllers to play Table of Tales and get back into that space. But I really want to play it. I mean, I even own it on PSVR 1, but now there's that inertia of setting up that entire old system that I was happy to tear down and not have to deal with again.
Yeah, and if you're listening and you like Demeo, I'm telling you, play Table of Tales. And I would even argue play it before Demeo. And if you like it, I think you set yourself up to like Demeo. If you don't like Table of Tales, I can't fathom you liking Demeo. I'm sure someone could disprove that. But the final thing I want to talk about, Alex, are some upcoming releases. So we've got Dyschronia Chronos Episode 2 is March 17th. You haven't quite played the first episode all the way through yet. Do you think you're just going to binge it, watch episode 1 and 2, or I should say play?
No, I'm going to take my time with episode 1. And I mean, we've got a lot of games to cover, so I'm going to take my time with episode 1. I'll consider that its own game, then move on to episode 2. I am excited that they've already released it. I really like this company. I like their visual novel games, and I'm so pumped that they're just continuing to pump more out, and they seem to be getting better every single time you play it. So this is an exciting addition to the library.
Yeah, Creed is a $20 upgrade. I don't have Creed. You do? Something you're going to spend the $20 on?
Yeah, it's either spend $20 or spend $40 and just buy the game outright. I already own Creed, so yeah, I'll spend $20 to get it cheaper. That's a steep upgrade. $10 seems more reasonable, especially since the game is so old, but I guess they're trying to prevent people from buying it recently in hopes that they'll get a cheap upgrade path. There's a lot of new content. They got stuff from the new movie and stuff, so I'm kind of okay with the $20 upgrade.
Then Gorn is coming out April 4th, a game I'm going to be honest, I've never really cared about it. Probably don't care about it now, but some people love it. So it's good to know it's coming out. And then finally, we've got Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. That's all that's on here. So do you know what that's about?
I was supposed to put the release date on here. It's coming out very soon. I saw a side-by-side comparison. I saw a side-by-side comparison of the PSVR version and the PSVR 2 version, and it was a night and day difference. It was glaringly obvious how enhanced a PSVR 2 looked, and I'm super excited to see that level of fidelity and the wonderful Walking Dead Saints and Sinners type gameplay. It's going to be a glorious game.
I can't wait because I need to play the first game. Now I need to play the second game. I cannot wait. And I can't wait for segment 2. We're talking about puzzling places. We're talking about more news. We're talking about Switchback VR. We're not reviewing it, but we got some thoughts. And just stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss it. Niho. Did I say that right?
Nope.
Oh, whatever.
All right. Did you take a break? Did you go get some of the drink? Is it wet? Your appetite, that is, Adam. Your appetite, nothing else. Did you whet your appetite for segment 2 of Play PSVR 2, the podcast, episode 112? Adam's going to hit us up with a review. Adam, you're ready to take the stand and enter your opinion on Puzzling Places?
Listen, you may have thought the day is over, but the court is still in session. Puzzling Places, take the stand. This game made by realities.io is $19.99 on the PlayStation Store. And although it may be charming, it is still charged with 3 counts of fun gameplay, 5 counts of value, and a single count of simplicity. So the first sentence of 3 counts of fun gameplay is an intriguing one because now, jurors of the court, I didn't say exciting. I said fun. There is a difference there. Putting together 3D jigsaw puzzles may not seem like your idea of a fun time, but roll my socks up and smoke them in a blunt because holy crap, it's not bad. There is a wide variety of interesting puzzles from the Musk Observatory, back alley bodegas, haunted houses, and castles. The 3D puzzles make it really a blast to put together because slowly you just see something form from nothing. It's really challenging actually because some of the pieces are rotated, so you may look at them from where you are at this moment and not really understand where they go in the whole order of life and the order of the puzzle. And so some of the puzzles just require you even to look inside them. So for example, I put together a big shipping container, and on the outside it was fairly simple. It was a shipping container, but then there was another layer of puzzles on the inside of the shipping container. And so for that, I had to either stick my head into the shipping container and work around, or they also have a tool that allows you to do that, but it's much more challenging. It's something I can't do in real life, or at least it would be much, much harder to do. So the relaxing nature of putting all these puzzles together, the serene atmosphere, and just the enjoyment of slowly seeing your creation come together is way more fun than it may sound. And you're going to have to trust me. And if you have doubts, there is a free trial available on the PlayStation Store to give it a play. And because of that, on 3 counts of fun gameplay, I find you, Puzzling Places, guilty.
Okay, Adam. So my big question with this is I'm a guy who I can enjoy some puzzles, but for the most part, I don't get it. When you're done with a puzzle, you just tear it down. Why would you do it again? As somebody who doesn't find themselves particularly fond of puzzles, I don't hate them. I do them sometimes. Is there anything in Puzzling Places, doing a puzzle in VR, that might make it more enjoyable for me?
I just think the fact that you can get up and walk around a puzzle, you can manipulate the puzzle in free space. And it's just kind of really cool to in 3D put this thing together. Like, for example, there are a lot of like the Musk Observatory. There's a lot that are like scientific-y that I thought of you the whole time I was doing the Musk Observatory because it's so freaking cool that like I am in the observatory kind of putting together the observatory. And then I made sure the last piece I put in was the telescope. It was just really friggin' neat, man. So it's almost meditative. It's relaxing. It is fun because the next thing I'll get to, the way they use eye tracking and use some of the rumble and not necessarily haptic feedback, but it adds a little with every piece. There's like a sense of accomplishment, and then you just blow when you put the final piece in. It's pretty cool. And like I said, there's a free trial. It takes about 20 minutes. No reason for you not to try the free trial and then make your decision based on that.
Yeah, fair enough. What's your next charge?
So on 5 counts of value, I want to talk about entertainment time versus price. So listen, you could pay $40 for 3 hours of Switchback VR, or you can pay $20 and take 3 hours to put together a single puzzle, assuming that, you choose the 400 or 1,000 piece option. So seriously, this game contains a ton of puzzles for the $20 that you're getting, and each one is customizable. So if you want a 25 piece puzzle, a 50, 100, 200, 400, or 1,000 piece variation of that puzzle, you can have it. So I noticed that a 50 piece puzzle takes about 20 to 30 minutes to do. A 100 piece took me about an hour, and I haven't done anything above the 100 yet. But even if you only did the 50-piece puzzles, for all 26 available puzzles that you get with purchasing the game, that is over 8.5 hours of puzzles and gameplay you are getting bare minimum, assuming that you don't do the puzzles that are more pieces and you don't redo any of the puzzles. Now, the one complaint I may have here is that you do get those initial 26 puzzles, but then there are monthly puzzle packs, but you have to pay for them. So rather than getting free puzzles every update once in a while, it's like, oh, you did your puzzles, now you got to pay to get more puzzles. But then when I say it out loud, I kind of feel like a bum for saying that. Like, it's a good business model, and I got a lot of time out of that $20. And they're putting in the time to develop these new puzzles and the ideas, and they have music associated with them, and it's not just like they're slapping it on there. So it's probably not that bad, but I don't know. Paying $5 for an additional puzzle won't kill me. So really, on the count of value, Puzzling Places, I find you guilty.
Adam. As a person who just said they didn't like Demeo for taking 3 hours to complete a single session, you are now promoting Puzzling Places because it is a game that takes 3 hours to complete a single puzzle. How do you square that in your mind?
I square it because putting the puzzle together, one, is more rewarding, and two, more engaging. Whereas Demeo, you moved your pieces and then you kind of just sat there for a while. And especially if you're playing multiplayer, you move and then you have 3 other people who have to move, and then you have the monsters that have to move. It's like borderline being in Firewall's lobby waiting for a new game. It's awful. And if you're playing by yourself, obviously you can constantly move, but it's just not as much fun. Whereas when you are putting the puzzle together, you're always focusing. And again, you have that bit of relaxation. You're not trying to think your way through middling scenarios. You're not trying to have conversation with the partner you just met online so you can come up with a strategy. It's just you and the puzzle, man. It's engaging. Just seeing that form out of a bunch of little pieces that surround you is real neat. I'm telling you, it's awesome.
There is nothing less engaging than putting a piece down and then doing nothing afterwards. And that is literally what putting together a puzzle is. You find a piece, you place it, and it's done. It's not
then
being
you move
moved.
to the next piece. And you know what? And that's the beautiful segue to my next point, Alex. Thank you. On the single count of simplicity, I understand what you're saying. And I understand that the persecution here argues that the game is too simple, that the gameplay may be boring and uninteresting. But I will admit, on the surface, this game is simple. Putting a jigsaw puzzle together is maybe a rather brain dead activity, but the developers made doing the simple things fun in virtual reality. For example, you have this rumble and a nice clicking effect when you put 2 pieces together. You can use eye tracking to select the piece that you want. Being able to get up and walk around the puzzle and grab each piece in the puzzle and rotate it is all of that is exceedingly satisfying and rewarding. And after so many pieces, you hear what they call premium sounds, like trains in the background, spooky sound effects, or Japanese tunes. This gives you an additional reward for progressing. And when you get to the last piece of the puzzle, there are these special sound effects that come into play. And as you place that puppy into the final slot, you see an array of fireworks splash across the backdrop. Sometimes complexity, Alex, isn't always better. Sometimes the best games are simple. They nail the things that make simple great. Puzzling Places may not be as complex as its puzzles, but it nails what it does and it makes it unique and fun to play. And because of that, on the single count of simplicity done well, I find you guilty.
So all you've told me is that the game is very simple and it takes a very long time.
It doesn't have to. It could be 20 minutes, whatever you want.
And it's the same thing over and over again. Adam, I need something to push me over the top, to even begin to spend my time with a free demo. where I'm putting together puzzle pieces. You're not the only person who loves this game. Almost everybody I know who's played this game has enjoyed it, but I still don't know why. And I'm afraid that if I get to the end of the demo, I'm going to say that's 20 minutes that I could have been doing any other game. That's a handful of races I could have done in Gran Turismo. That is, a handful of levels I could have gone through in Res. That is 10% of an encounter in Demeo I could have enjoyed. Why? Why is my big question. Maybe you don't have an answer for it. That's okay. Give us your final verdict.
The thing is, I'm telling you, man, it is rewarding and it just feels so right. I know there are games, for example, Vertigo Home, that that game, Vertigo Home, is just bad, but you like it because it's simple. You don't have to overly think and it just feels right. Stunt Kite Master, another game that most people argue is bad, but you like it. It's simple. You're just sitting there watching the flight or the kite in the air. It feels good. They relay something. It's almost meditative to you. It's fun. That's the exact same way this game is, but it's actually not bad. It's actually a good game that does the simple things well. I'm begging you, just try the trial. Get the 20 minutes in, build something, make use of your time, and then leave. You're going to be more refreshed leaving the game than when you entered. And that does come to my final verdict. The final verdict of whether Puzzling Places is a PSVR 2 game worthy of your time, worthy of your attention and your money. I find you 100% guilty. Alex, right here, we got to talk. This is going to be tough because would I rather put together puzzles or play Demeo? I would rather put together these puzzles, but I'm going to try to be a reasonable man here. I'm going to try to be reasonable. It's not as fun as Runner. It doesn't utilize the technology as well as Runner, and Demeo has its things going for us. But as bad as I hate to say it, I mean, I put this over Kayak VR. So now this means, is Drums Rock, which is right now at number 5, does this overtake Drums Rock or does it go behind it? And this is a discussion we got to have, buddy. I like me some Puzzling Places. I admit it's simple. I admit putting puzzles together may not sound fun, but I played the trial of Drums Rock and it seemed very dependent on the song that you played on how much you enjoyed it. So assuming you want Drums Rock at number 5, what would be your argument to keep it there?
The argument you have for Drums Rock is dependent on the song that you play. Puzzling Places is similarly dependent on the puzzle that you're putting together.
No, I put together a kimono of some woman I don't even know, loved it.
That says more about you than it does about the puzzle, Adam. No, I admit I don't get it, and because you've played both games, I'm leaving it in your hands. You are the judge in this case. You are the jury, and you're the executioner. You get to pick where this goes in the list. I might not like it, but I have to accept the law of the land.
Gosh. It is rough because when you start looking at some of these games, even like Tentacular, I'm like, man, is Tentacular really better than Puzzling Places? Is Tentacular better than Drums Rock? Like, it's going to get tougher with every week, buddy. But if I'm just looking between Drums Rock and I'm looking at Puzzling Places, you get more entertainment with Puzzling Places. I think if you look at across the board what other people think, Puzzling Places is going to have a higher score. There's more interesting. I wish we could make them tied, right? Can we make them tied?
Absolutely not.
Bob Saget.
Adam, if you want to put it above Drums Rock, I can't stop you. So just go ahead and do it.
I know. But at some point, I don't want to start putting all my games over yours, because then when you're going to have a game, you're going to be like, listen, you've overtaken my games for a long time. This one is my turn. And then it's going to be a stupid game like Stunt Kite Masters 2 or something like that.
We should be so lucky. We should be so lucky.
That's right. You wish. So, I mean,
I will say this
at number 5. I'm going to put it above Drums Rock.
Yeah,
the thing is, I want the listeners, for those of you who've played both, or you've played both the trials, or based on our discussion, let us know what you think, because this really could have gone either way. I think it's fair. And to be honest, that middle ground between puzzling places and tentacular, possibly even thumper, those almost could be interchangeable, right? Like we're really having to nitpick, and it could even be dependent on how we're feeling that night, which one overtakes the other. Like to think that right now with our list, Thumper is in last place is wild because Thumper was so good. So, I mean, it's a good problem to have, right? It means these games are very good. They're advanced, they're engaging, we're enjoying them for a game like Thumper to be last. And now Rez should be last. We didn't put it on here, but whatever. So moving on, Alex, you need to help me, okay? I keep reading how people, especially on Reddit, they like to do this thing where they're like, Gran Turismo 7 ruined gaming for me. And they're like, oh, what did Gran Turismo 7? Did it make them sick? Did they just not like it? Like what? And then they're like, it's so good, I can't play anything else. Everything I play just doesn't hail in comparison. And so I don't enjoy it as much because I can't stop playing Gran Turismo 7. Again, I appreciate what Gran Turismo 7 does, but you clearly like it better than me. I think you understand this better than I do. It doesn't compute. I want you to tell me, what am I missing, or what are people seeing that it is this revolutionary?
I've seen you play Gran Turismo 7, Adam. The way you play Gran Turismo 7 is you buy the fastest car you can, you drive as fast as you can, you drive in the wrong direction, and what you're doing is you're pushing the limits of the possible immersion that can occur from Gran Turismo 7. However, if you're a reasonable player like me, somebody who understands what Gran Turismo 7 is going for, somebody who can enjoy the subtleties of racing, you're well within the limits of immersion that Gran Turismo 7 can provide with PSVR 2. As a result, people that enjoy that are finding an experience that is undeniable in Gran Turismo 7, combining that with this kind of like game as a service that they've done with Gran Turismo 7, where there are time trials, there are championship cups, there's all sorts of league type behavior that you can get yourself involved in, regardless of your skill level. It's an unending stream of new races for you to enter, new struggles you can have, new opponents you can race against. That it doesn't stop, it doesn't get boring, and it's the pinnacle of immersion if you're playing it the right way. There's never been a game that puts you in the shoes of that experience better than Gran Turismo 7 has. As you, somebody who doesn't really care about simulation racing or car racing, it makes sense that you don't get it. But if you're somebody like me who can appreciate driving a Honda Civic around a racetrack or taking a Volkswagen bus around the Nürburgring, those are really enjoyable experiences. They can be relaxing, they can be stressful, but it is something that I won't be able to do in real life. But this is as close as I will maybe ever get to doing it in real life. And it does feel like real life when you're playing it appropriately. So to top it off, it looks just as good as it does in the flat version. Gran Turismo 7 is one of the best looking PS5 games just in general due to the faithfulness of the car models. And in VR, it looks just as good, if not better. And, we've had in the cockpit racing games before, but we haven't had the ability to look around like we can. And it makes a huge difference. So it's a case of a gameplay, a type of game being elevated to a level it's never been elevated before, whereas puzzling places, you could still play this game in flat mode and have a good time. You wouldn't be able to walk around and stuff, but you'd still be able to move the puzzles in 3D, find the pieces, have a good time. You could play Demeo flat, you could play Table of Tales flat, and get 95% of what you get in the VR version. Whereas Gran Turismo 7, the comparison of the VR version being, 100%, the flat version is like 50%. You've basically doubled the quality and level of engagement in the game by playing it in VR. And it also happens to be a top flight game from the get-go.
So my problem with what you just said, nothing with the latter portion, but you said, oh, Adam, you play with just the fastest car and you break the rules. One, that's fun. Two, I had to play the game the way it was intended to get the money to buy that car. So I have played it where you actually need to drive a Honda Civic and you need to use it. And I didn't enjoy it. So what would you tell me now? Like, is it just not for me? Or
It's just not for you, but I'm saying that somebody who plays as the game is supposed to be played and they enjoy the game as it's supposed to be played, it's an unparalleled level of immersion and gameplay and excitement that you just can't get anywhere else. It's like the game Gun Club. People love guns, they love going to shooting ranges. I particularly don't care that much for it. So for me it's like, yeah, I'm shooting a gun at like a wooden stand-up dude. Like, who gives a crap? But people who like guns are like, it feels like I'm shooting a gun in a shooting range, and there's all these guns I can test it out with. And it's like, yeah, so what? Who cares? But for these people, it's like, this is the closest I'm going to get to be shooting this rare World War II gun or this super exotic $100,000 machine gun, and it feels like you're actually doing it. It's that kind of thing. If it's not for you, you're not going to see why it's this constant draw.
I got it. It feels like I'm putting together a jigsaw puzzle. You don't get it, Alex. You just don't get it. Okay, no, I'm going to move to my airing a grievance because I'm really effing ticked off here, man. I have been waiting for Switchback VR since launch. If you watch our content, you know, that is a game I said that's a first aside from Rez, that is the first PSVR 2 game I'm trying because I am pumped for it. Rush of Blood was epic. So the game comes out, and boom, what do we get? A bunch of freaking reviews of all these people. I'm not going to name names, but where's an effing ton of them? YouTubers, actual outlets for quote unquote gaming and VR. They're all like, oh, the game's incredible. Can you last the whole time? It's scary. All this. And so I was like, obviously, okay. Oh, okay. That's what I expected. Nothing really rubbed me the wrong way. And then the actual reviews came out. The people who aren't paid by you clicking on their effing article, they start talking about the game. You go to Reddit, it is just slathered with just horrible things about Switchback. People begging PlayStation for their money back, saying the graphics suck, the immersion's bad, it's not even scary, the jump scares are predictable. I have yet to read a single good thing about Switchback. And all the ones that seemingly are, like there was a Reddit article and they were like, the headline was, there is one good thing about Switchback, guys. And so I was like, okay, what do they see? What is their opinion? Their opinion was that it's so bad, it makes you appreciate all the other games. And so I hate that these freaking people get review codes and they always talk about how great the game is. It convinces hardworking people to buy the game because it's already a much anticipated game. And then your freaking not naming names, some of your outlets are saying, oh, it's a great experience. You're going to have a wonderful time. It's so scary. Then it freaking sucks a big donkey dong. Now you wasted your money. Thankfully, PlayStation's being cool and giving a lot of people their money back. But for those who can't do that, you wasted $40. And it's I've been told it's 3 hours. So I thankfully did not buy it because I waited. And thankfully, Alex, sadly, you took one for us, buddy. You're the man. He pre-ordered it. Alex, you actually played a little bit of it. This isn't a review. You haven't finished it. Are the Redditors, are the people of Twitter and on the forums, are they accurate or are they just being, foul-mouthed Redditors?
I think the level of vitriol, not the level, people are a bit too upset about it, but I think the amount of vitriol, as the number of people coming out and saying, this is a disappointment, this is not good, is indicative of the truth behind how upset people are. I played the game for about an hour, so I really just kind of got through the first level. And I just have a couple notes here of just the experience. I'm a guy, as we say, I'm not a graphic snob. If the game doesn't look great, that's cool. But there are things that bug me about Switchback so far in this first level. Maybe it's going to get better. I don't know. That leave me disappointed with the experience so far. One thing is, like, the first level is way less enjoyable than the first level of Rush of Blood, where Rush of Blood, you're at like this weird circus and you're just shooting like these, ducks and targets and stuff like that. But you have the guy like harping at you and making kind of these creepy wisecracking jokes and stuff like that. That was a cool scene. It set the mood. It set the tone perfectly. This one, you're like in a train car that wrecks and somebody's yelling at you and there's a phone call and then you find yourself on a train ride and it's very tutorially. There's like text popping up telling you what to do as opposed to you just figuring it out because there's only one thing you can do. You can shoot things. It's not that hard to figure out. And then weird things like the guns, and maybe like I got to change the difficulty mode or something. The guns have like an auto aim that, like, aside from making it easier for me to shoot, it makes it kind of harder to shoot. Like I'll shoot the gun and it almost seems like the bullets curve to try to hit the target it thinks I'm shooting at, when if it had just gone straight where I was shooting it, it would hit the target I was trying to shoot at. That just felt so odd. So it was like harder to hit things. I don't know if there's like a random number generator happening behind the scenes with the shooting, but it felt inaccurate, and it felt like a forced inaccuracy. Here's a big terrible thing. Load screens. I forgot load screens existed. This game has load screens.
That's wild.
This game has load screens, and they're long enough to make me think that the game has glitched out, where it's like, no, something's wrong here. Like the game, this is a problem.
Wait,
like,
are we talking like 10 seconds?
Yeah, like 10, 20 seconds.
Wow.
I'm like sitting there. It's a black screen, black 2D screen, and there's a little thing in front of you spinning. And I started shooting at it thinking like, oh, I'm supposed to shoot it to continue to the next thing. No, you can shoot. It doesn't do anything. And that leads me to my other point. The environments are incredibly non-interactive. There is a box over here you can shoot that will break apart. Cool. I see the identical box on the other side that maybe is just like slightly bit in the background, but not officially in the background. I shoot it, and it just leaves a generic black bullet hole from where I shot it with no interaction whatsoever. And there's so many things like that where you'll see like a skull placed somewhere, or a helmet somewhere, or a box somewhere that you shoot it, and it doesn't break because it's actually part of this like set piece that's not supposed to be touched. The introduction of the bad guys in Rush of Blood was exciting because you've gone through this still environment, and then suddenly you go into this room and somebody's walking at you, better shoot them. This one, it's just like, oh, and now here's where the zombie part is, where you got to shoot zombies, which totally eliminates the thrill and surprise of it. But to try to circumvent that, they try to add in random jump scares. And so in the first level, just periodically, you'll have a zombie just pop up from underneath your train car, and he's covered in green goo for some reason, but you're not in the green goo level, so you don't even know why he's there. And it's just like they were like, maybe you didn't have enough stuff to shoot. Let's just try to scare you real quick by having a guy randomly pop up. And they do it like 4 or 5 times. So after the third time, it's just like, this isn't like scary. It's just annoying that this guy has randomly popped up. They don't utilize the 3D sound very well. So there were times where I was getting attacked from the left. No real head haptics to speak of, except if you like forget to lean and you hit your head and it's a subtle boom. But like, it'd be nice if the head haptics would indicate that I'm getting hit or something like that, so that I would know that I'm getting hit from here, as opposed to just hearing like, oh, it sounds like somebody's next to me. The enemies would sneak because I'm looking over here. Enemy sneaks up on my left, and it's, oh, this guy's been here for God knows how long. The game gives me no sense of telling me that that's happening. Mm-hmm. There were times where enemies popped up in front of me, walked up to me, and they just kind of stood there and stared at me, waiting for me to shoot them, which was just ridiculous. I unlocked new weapon. The first new weapon I unlocked was a one-shot grenade launcher. I had no idea that that's what it was, and I lost that shot immediately and hit nothing with it. The other guns that I have was like an Uzi, which was less useful than the pistol that I initially got because it had so much spray I couldn't shoot the guys in the head, so I was just wasting bullets shooting them in the body. There's a packs of zombies you encounter where like they are kind of in the background. They're actually behind a fence, and you would think you should be able to shoot them through the fence. No. They consider that fence impenetrable, so you can't shoot the zombies from behind the fence. But they like handpick a couple, and if they make it out of the fence, then once they're out of the fence, you can shoot them. The fence is torn apart, and you can shoot them then. But you can't shoot the ones behind it. Like, why is there not that interactivity? And these aren't like game-breaking things, but it's just like immersion breaking, experience breaking, and just a lack of thought. And it just overall seems like the level design of it just is kind of not really thought through. It's like here's the analogy I would put. The movie Rocky was just a really good movie that happened to have boxing in it. And that's what made it a good movie. The boxing was fun, but it was just a really good movie that happened to be about boxing. Then Rocky 2 came out, and it's a boxing movie that like happened to have Rocky in it. And that's the difference, is that Rush of Blood was just a really good VR shooting game that happened to be shooting zombies on a roller coaster. Whereas this is a roller coaster zombie game that just happens to allow you to shoot them. And that's kind of where the difference lies, and how it was designed. It feels almost designed by committee to make a sequel. The pacing is really odd. The roller coaster will slow down sometimes, and it's supposed to be building up some thrill, but because you can't feel the gravity in your gut or anything like that, I highly suspect that the entire reason it does these scenes, because there is literally nothing to do in these scenes. You're just sitting there waiting for it to slowly rise up. It's not building tension. There's nothing scary happening. There's nothing to shoot for the most part, except for random doodads. Sometimes they might just be in the background and you can't. I'm almost positive these elements exist as a load screen to load the next set of tracks that you're about to go through in this level, and they don't want you to realize it's a load screen. Really, the ultimate summary is that Rush of Blood feels like either DLC or not Rush of Blood. Switchback VR feels like DLC or a sequel to Rush of Blood that was developed for the PSVR 1, but it was so late in the cycle, Sony was probably like, just wait and put it on PSVR 2 because we need you to put out a PSVR 2 game. The graphics are blurry. There's random pop-in happening. They're wholly unimpressive. As I said, the assets are recycled. Green goo zombie popping up 3 or 4 times when I'm outside of green goo area makes no sense. Yeah. It's not scary. Rats running around that you can't shoot. You just got to pump bullets into a group of rats and then they dissolve into a mist when it's decided you've had enough time shooting. Like stuff like that is just annoying, disappointing, not tactile feeling, and wholly unimmersive. Maybe it gets better.
It makes me wonder if this was ready at launch, but then Sony saw how bad it sucked and was like, we don't want this to be a first impression of the PSVR 2. So they were like, we're going to make you wait. Do you think there's any chance that could have happened? Because if not, imagine how dysfunctional this would be if it was a month earlier.
I don't know how much they could have changed within the month to make it better. How much, maybe it was absolutely horrible, but I don't think it would take a month to fix the things that they need to fix to make it an enjoyable game. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think Sony saw this and said, oh my God, we're only letting people review a handful of games for the PSVR 2 review. And if this is one of those games, then we're going to get slammed as, oh, the big launch title, the big title everybody's going to play. They want Rush of Blood 2. They're going to play it, and it's going to be wholly unimpressive. It does not feel like a PSVR 2 game. It looks like a PS2. Looks like a really good PS2 or just a normal PS3 game, and you have a VR headset on when you're playing it. I think that's exactly what happened. They just said, we don't want this part of the launch lineup because it's going to just bring everybody down and be disappointed. Let them get Gran Turismo, Resident Evil 8, all these other games under their belt, and then they can suffer through this.
What happened? Rush of Blood was so good. Like, if they just ported Rush of Blood over, I would be thrilled. Like, and this is, if you remember, Supermassive Games also had the Impatient, which was a stinker. Now this is another,
And Bravo Team.
And Bravo Team, which was kind of a stinker. So
yeah, definitely a stinker.
Do you think Rush of Blood was the exception, that somehow they made a masterpiece, but really they are just a turd spouting factory?
I think they have too much going on. I think their development team is spread thin, and I think they said as much when after they did a post-mortem on Bravo Team at some point and were like, we were just doing too much at once and we couldn't devote resources to make this a good game. Like, we ran out of money, we ran out of time, and it was like, you just got to get something out there so you can recoup that loss. I think this is very much something along those lines of, if I had a scale of Rush of Blood on one side, and I think Bravo Team is just abysmal, maybe it's better, but I have no interest in going back to it. On that scale, this feels much more like a Bravo Team type thing, a functional Bravo Team at least. It doesn't feel broken, but more of a Bravo Team than a Rush of Blood, and how this stuff operates. And the team is probably spread thin, right? They're doing this whole Dark Pictures anthology. They're making all these story-based games, Man of Medan, and all those games like that too. So I don't doubt that they're busy. It's just disappointing that their efforts weren't. This could have been knocked out of the park. Everybody wanted it. We all wanted the next Rush of Blood, and Sony probably would have been happy to support them in making that. And it just, I guess maybe again, they just ran out of money, ran out of time.
It's so disappointing. And what's, I think, very intriguing is, and I'm trying to double check myself here, I'm going by memory, I don't think there is now a good horror game on the PSVR 2.
I mean, Resident Evil 8.
Oh, I'm an idiot. Yeah, okay. Well,
it's the best game on PSVR 2.
What a stupid. Well, I am so stupid. Okay, other than Resident Evil 8, I just feel like the PSVR, there were so many games that were horror games, and they work so well. And the PSVR 2 has every capability of doing well, much better than the last generation. And not only are there not any games, but aside from Resident Evil, the one we got sucks. So are you Have you ever? I mean, you're probably gonna finish the game, right? I mean, you review games that
Like
for the
3 hours long. Yeah.
But if you didn't, if it weren't for this podcast, would you even finish it?
There's so much better stuff out there to do right now. I mean, maybe if I heard it got fixed, it's so short. Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna give it a run through. Maybe I'll be surprised. But it just doesn't start strong, and I don't have high hopes that they would have put more effort into the end than they did the beginning of the game. Uh, and there's so much to play out there. Just speaking of horror games, there's Afterlife VR that's being announced. That's announced. That's gonna be looks like horror-ish. There is, oh goodness, I just looked at it. I'm looking at the list now. Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. The first one is pretty scary. Second one's also going to be kind of scary. More action scary, but still a decent horror game. And that's kind of what we're stuck with for now. However, I will say that's kind of a good thing in the sense that a lot of people did horror on PSVR 1 because that's the obvious choice. Now that people are less defaulting to horror and more just defaulting to good games like Runner, kind of new novel experiences like Runner gives us, the VR space is getting mature and they're trying new things. They're trying new game design and they're not just defaulting to like, oh, if I make this dark and scary, people are going to think it's good.
Yeah. And I would not hold much hope for Switchback. The developers did post something on Reddit, or at least made a statement. It was posted on Reddit but they acknowledge that, okay, people aren't happy. It sucks, big ones. But they didn't really have it seemed like an empty, just like an acknowledgement of, yeah, we know it's bad, but no plan of action on how, hey, there's going to be a patch and it's going to eliminate load times and it's going to increase frame rate. Or, I mean, it seemed just like their HR was like, okay, we got to say something. I guess we'll just acknowledge it. And I don't think it's going to be fixed. I really don't.
What's bad about it is the way they acknowledged it was like, hey, if you encounter issues, let us know what those issues are so we can fix those issues. The issues aren't bugs. It's not the game crashing on me. It's not enemies not working. The issues are things that as you go through and play the game and test it, there's glaring issues of like, it doesn't feel good. The game design is bad. The graphics don't look good. It's not like, oh, randomly this wall will disappear or something. No, it's just like that wall, that environment doesn't look like a PSVR 2 game. It looks like a PSVR 1 game. The amount of like pop in of foliage, like I'm close to the wall and suddenly I see out of nowhere a thing pop up and suddenly exist on the wall because they just had poor optimization. That kind of stuff isn't bugs to be fixed. It's like a rehaul that needs to be done. And I don't think if they didn't have enough money to do it right the first time, where are they going to find the money to do it right the second time? I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I know. So how much, last question, how much money, what percentage sale should I buy it? If it's $10, should I buy it?
Yeah, you probably have an hour's worth of fun out of it, but there's so much other stuff. By the time that's $10, we're gonna have all these other classic games that are $10. So why would you go for that?
It's a good point. I hope Alex reviews Switchback VR next week. And 3 reviews in 1 episode. You better believe it. And while we are reviewing things left and right, so should you. Just like Red Scott, review us on iTunes, sub on Spotify, YouTube, and Twitter. Heck, we will even give you a shout out. Yes, that's right. A live shout out on the 5th most popular podcast in Hong Kong. Think about what that could do for your self-esteem, your career, and your libido. Thank you for listening to Play PSVR 2, the podcast where virtual reality is our reality.